So welcome everybody to another conversation hosted by Heart Community Group. I'm Kimberly Hare, and this time I'm delighted that we're speaking with Bel Jacobs. Bel Jacobs does so much, it's difficult to know how to introduce you, Bel. And I know when we were talking before preparing for this, you know, we've got sort of themes which might seem very diverse on first sight: sustainable fashion, animal agriculture, climate emergency centres, and also, of course, the backdrop of the climate and ecological emergency itself. But they all, as we'll see, they all kind of are connected. So shall we start with the state of play at the moment? I guess people on the call will know, but just give us a quick few-minute summary of just how dire the predicament is.
So Kim, there's actually one thing I wanted to say in response to your question. I know I do a lot, and yet I think it's the condition of the climate activist where you never feel that you're doing enough, and that's quite exhausting. My partner once said to me, what would help you rest? And I said, if the climate and ecological crisis was solved, I could then rest. And then and he went, well, that's not going to happen imminently. But if at all, if we're not careful, you know, when you ask me to describe what's going on on the planet, you know, Kim, I think everyone knows, although they wouldn't be here. We're really, really. I think we're really in a desperately difficult situation. I mean, I'll throw some stats at you. Apparently, if countries actually meet some of the voluntary agreements that they have signed up to, we would still be on course for 2.7 degrees of warming. That's if they meet them. They're nowhere near meeting them. So we're currently at 1.2, I think 1.1, 1.2 degrees over pre-industrial levels, and we just need to switch on our televisions to see what's happening. I think the UK has been given a moment of grace this summer because it's been a relatively clement, even cool summer. Scientists are trying to work out what that's about. I think it's the Gulf streams, or, you know, but I don't know if next summer's going to be so easy. In fact, I know that the mayor of London has predicted 45-degree summers are going to be very, very regular occurrences going forward. And if you think about the 45, I mean, I've been out in 45 degrees, it's horrendous. I was in northern Kenya for a press trip to visit some groups back in the day when I had this wonderful job, and we tried to walk. Actually, I think it was 40, and we tried to walk through the town, and within 5-6 minutes we had no energy. It's absolutely punishing, 40 degrees. So when the mayor of London says we're at 45 degrees, looking at regular temperatures, we know that we're in trouble, and that's London. And I think, you know, one of the aspects of being a climate activist is you have to continually, and a climate activist in the global north, one of the things that you have to bear in mind is those in the global south and those on the front line. We cannot, I think, move forward with conscience without understanding the impact of what we do on other peoples. It's just so fundamental to knowing how bad the emergency is, but also, you know, just recognizing the turmoil that we have placed them, other peoples, in through essentially our consumption habits. On worst case scenarios, where, you know, depending on which climate scientist that you follow, some people are saying we're on course for 7-degree rise by the end of this century. That's not possible. It's not possible for life on this earth to continue. You know, and we're not talking just about humans. We're talking, and the animals are getting slammed even as we speak. And I can't, you know, even as I talk about this, Kim, it's almost like I don't believe it, because if I really believed it, I would be running for the hills or the sea or wherever I thought might be safest. It's almost like this information is so big and feels so unimaginable, like you're stepping inside a movie. One of the things that I talk about at the moment is that, for example, something that's just not reported in the news, and why I constantly ask people to follow the climate scientists on social media, is that about 50,000 people have died in the Horn of Africa due to the effects of prolonged drought. Half of those were children. These feel like stats, but when you see images coming out of that area, this isn't just stats. These are about families. These are about little kids losing their mums and dads. This is about unbearable temperatures that all of us here probably just couldn't cope with. And if you do follow the climate scientists like I now, be prepared for a level of emotional authenticity that perhaps we weren't getting 10 years ago when they were trying to remain quite cool and calm about it. The climate scientists are distressed. And in fact, I do have a quote by a leading climate scientist, Peter Kalmus, formerly of NASA. He said, "It's incredibly difficult being a climate scientist in this society at an emotional level. We can see the future. It is terrifying. We are being ignored." And just on a personal level, I remember my 13-year-old daughter at the time looked across the table at me and she said, "Mum, when's it going to start cooling down?" And I honestly didn't know what to say to her. I stopped, and then I eventually said, "It's not going to start cooling down until we take action." And people are desperate for it. This is the other thing I notice in my communities. People want action desperately. The governments and big business are not moving fast enough. So in a way, it is really up to us to hold this terrible information and somehow to turn it into compassionate action for our communities. So that is a very brief summary of the climate and ecological emergency.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is hard. And, it's not just that governments aren't doing enough, they're going very much in the wrong direction. So where do you want to go next? What kind of calls to you as a topic? I know you're very passionate about sustainable fashion. You're very passionate about animal agriculture and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the way, well, I'll say what I said to you just before we came online. Just in case people don't know, I used to be a fashion editor. And so I spent 13 years churning out content for a fashion page. And whether you may love fashion or you may not, it's a really, really, even though on sometimes I think, God, what a waste of time that was. On the other hand, it gave me quite a good insight into how an industry works to create desire for its products. There is no industry more efficient than fashion at corralling multitudes of talent and then presenting this perfect package that then makes everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people want to buy more stuff. And fashion is phenomenally efficient at that. So in a way, and then the other thing that fashion was useful for is not only did it present this beautiful bauble of creativity and fun and laughter and light and community and creativity, but what was behind the scenes was so bad, and its impact on the planet, people and animals so heavy and remained hidden for so long. So therefore, I now advocate for sustainable fashion systems. And when I say sustainable fashion systems, I essentially mean a massive contraction of the industry. It was actually a woman called Ursula de Castro from a group called Fashion Revolution who said the most sustainable piece of clothing is the one already in your wardrobe. Fashion creates 100 billion items of clothing a year, up to 90%, maybe more than that is thrown away. A huge proportion of that is dumped on the shores of other countries where it degrades into their oceans because 69% of it is plastic, now plastic. Those fossil fuel companies get everywhere. So we're sending plastic clothing back to countries. So again, I think what fashion was also very useful for is as a model of an industry that felt absolutely fine about exploiting the vulnerable. And we've got to a situation now, for example, where Bangladesh, its entire society is practically built on the production of cheap plastic fashion, which they make it, send it to us, we wear it a couple of times, chuck it, it gets sent back to other countries, it pollutes their lands. So where fashion has been fantastic is teaching me about colonization. And this idea that colonization is gone is not true, because fashion is an industry where the global north are demanding of the global south the time of their people, the energy of their people, the cultures of their people, their animals, their lands, their resources, growing cotton in countries where kids don't have enough to eat, for me is a crime. And then obviously I also work in animal rights and animal advocacy. Essentially, I started into that through my complete distress about what we were doing to animals in the agricultural system. You know, up to 99% of animals we eat today are within factory farm systems, which allows them nothing, takes them from their families, takes their lives as incredibly young. So I came into it because of that. But since then, when you look at the impact of animal agriculture on the planet, it's devastating. And one of the things that I didn't mention when we were talking about climate breakdown is the fact that it's pretty widely recognized now that even if we sucked every ounce of carbon out of the air and we stopped all emissions, what we've done to the planet, what we've done to the earth, what we've done to the ground beneath our feet is now so horrendous that we probably wouldn't survive that either. One of the key drivers of ecological breakdown is animal agriculture. So when you ask what we talked about, Claire, before I came on the call, is that I now find myself within my work trying to demystify systems that have profited on the vulnerable, the weaker, for whatever reason, those with less voice, those with no voice at all, like the animals, to the imperilment of human civilization.
Yes.
And so it's really a David and Goliath situation, and I'm not the only one. I'm really not the only one. I probably talk more, but you know, there is a network of people rising up saying, so much has been hidden from us. We become, under the guise of freedom, we've become victims ourselves.
Yeah.
We've been deemed as nothing more than consumers. We've been kept as consumers by hidden processes that are deliberately hidden from us. And now I spend a lot of my time trying to tell the truth, basically, about what's going on. And every day I find out something and I'm going, how the hell have we let that happen for the last 50 years? You know, it's quite phenomenal.
So just going back to fashion, you told me this amazing, I can't remember what it was exactly, but like how much, my question is, do you believe there is such a thing as sustainable fashion? and you said something about like how many years of clothes we've already got, like if we just stop making it.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So someone quoted, and actually it was Patrick Grant in British Sewing Bee, said we have 6 generations of clothing. Right now, we do. Right now, you know, so we could stop producing clothing for 6 generations. I hasten to add, I think the definition of generation there is 15 years, but it's still 100 years worth of clothing that we have right now. And I think if you look at the processes that go into making, what's that fantastic stat? Well, not fantastic, but it's very, it takes 2,700 litres of water to create one cotton t-shirt. So 2,700 litres of water. And that's through things like enough water for the cotton, possibly in the processing of the fossil fuels to turn it into plastics, in the washing of the cotton, in the bleaching of the cotton, and a lot of water, 2,700 litres of water. And I remember standing in front of a classroom, actually with you, Kim, and saying, here's a litre of water, 2,700 to make one t-shirt. Think about how many t-shirts there are in every shop that you see. And then just link that to that stat. 50,000 people have died in the Horn of Africa due to prolonged drought. And how would they feel if they knew that we were using water for a single cotton t-shirt? I'm only laughing, Kim, because I think you can draw so many statistics out, but sometimes you just need to place 2 together to make people go, what?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And is there any such thing as sustainable fashion? So because this is me and I never answer anything in a brief way, there's nothing that makes, no, it always makes me slightly sad when a new young designer launches another collection saying, I'm going to do this in a completely sustainable way. And part of me is like, very grateful to them. but part of me is thinking we're going into this terrible time, and the last thing we need is another new fashion label.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
not, yeah, they're not going to have the power to counter the major players. So there'll always be this lone voice in the wilderness trying to do the best thing at enormous cost. But
I also think it's the word fashion. I mean,
yes,
there's sustainable clothing,
yes,
I think,
yes,
but yeah, why? Yeah,
yeah.
follow the.
So and again, I love your questioning of the term fashion. There are groups that are going, can we just, because fashion has embedded in it all of these drivers of consumption, all of these ideas of, if you own this, you'll be better than me. Fashion, fashion. Clothing is a much more accurate way to describe what we actually need.
Yeah, there's a terrific documentary that's only showing in selected cinemas. I don't know if you've heard about it, called The Nettle Dress.
No, but I'm
Oh,
interested in that.
this guy, it's a beautiful, beautiful story. He basically took 7 years to learn how to, weave from nettles, and created this really rather lovely dress for his daughter. And then they made a whole film documentary about it. But it's
Oh,
kind of yeah, the nettle dress. There's a trailer on YouTube. You can.
I'll look that up. That's such a beautiful idea. Because on one hand, you think, oh, 7 years to make a single dress is a long time. But during that, it's the process, isn't it? It's
That's
the
right. And
process.
it was the way he poured all of
Yeah,
his love
yeah,
into his dress, and
yeah,
discovered so much about himself and life and what was
yeah.
important and so on in the process.
And nettles.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is lovely, because it actually really, there's something about that. I really want to see it now, because it's
yeah,
about the slowness of the
yeah,
process, and it's about really working with nature sensitively to
yeah,
create this single beautiful item that we'll actually value, that won't end up washing up on the shores of Ghana or on
yeah,
fire in Atacama Desert.
yeah,
It's actually a beautiful idea.
yeah. So, any more you want to say about animal agriculture? You've already said it's one of the biggest things that's wrecking everything.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, it is one of the sites of the most widespread industrialized cruelty to other sentient beings. And there are legal practices in there, like the docking of a piglet's tails so that they don't gnaw them when they're frustrated by being kept inside all the time without anesthetic. And there's so many things that happen within animal agriculture that, if we were doing it to a dog, for example, would be shocking and horrifying. But they are conducted, every day and by the thousands. And I do think that as a culture, as a civilization, as a society, we need to seriously consider what we're doing to the other species on this planet. I think it's a justice issue, and I think it's also about who we think we are. What is the point of calling ourselves a nation of where? How striking is the cognitive dissonance of calling ourselves a nation of animal lovers and yet chowing down on the body of, really what was essentially a very helpless creature who had no say in that. But it's not just that, Kim. Now, as I said to you, I mean, for me that should be enough, but it's not. And when I started to look at the impact of animal agriculture on the planet, I was really staggered. And I will churn out a few stats here and there just for you to get the measure of this industry. An industry, I have to say, which is as powerful as fossil fuels, is as controlling as fossil fuels in that they will control the narrative as much as they can, but who, due to odd cultural quirks, are not under the spotlight as much as fossil fuels. So some of the domineering companies in animal agriculture, Cargill, for example, the big baddies, they're just not known amongst ordinary people. Everyone knows Shell.
Yeah,
People don't know Cargill. Cargill are doing just as much to harm the planet as Shell are. No one's putting up huge signs to Cargill. Well, very few groups are. And yet, let's look at how animal agriculture impacts the planet. So bear in mind, just bear with me, half of the world's habitable land is used for agriculture. Okay, that's all agriculture. half of the world is used for for agriculture, but 3/4 of that half is only for animal agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And that involves clearing of lands, decimation of wild landscapes. It means often monocropping feeds for the animals. So we're just laying waste to land, either to graze them or to grow the crops to feed them. Animal agriculture produces between 14.5 and 51% of greenhouse gas emissions. That shockingly huge gap is partly due, the 51% figure, and lots of people argue, we can really get into lots and lots of arguing about this, but the 51%, as far as I understand, is about the loss of carbon capture that you could have had if you'd left those forests intact instead of taking them down for feed. Stats like we have 80 to 100 billion land animals killed for food a year, but we still have 1 billion and rising people going hungry. Animal agriculture, despite this impact of the land, produces only 18% of calories, 36% of protein. So the human diet is still receiving most of its nutrition from plant-based food systems. And then it's about this one, which I mentioned in that talk that you were referring back to, the grain it takes to produce one burger would feed 200 people.
Sorry, say that again.
The grain it takes to produce one burger, to send it through the cow, would feed 200 people. So again, this is another statistic that I invite you to lay against that statistic that I began with, 50,000 people dying of prolonged hunger in the Horn of Africa. 90% of the soy consumed by humans is within meat, fish, and eggs, so it's not being consumed directly by humans, it's being fed through to the animals. Things like a single egg takes 240 litres of water to produce. So in a drying climate, a climate that is losing its water in some areas, 240 litres is a lot to produce one egg. And then the other one is 600 litres of water to produce 1 litre of milk. So one of the reasons I trot out these statistics is that we're talking about resource use that I think is going through the animal and then giving us relatively so much less than we've put in. So putting aside egregious sort of animal cruelty, we're just wasting resources. And then the other really sad thing is, I think 90% of soy grown in the Amazon goes to animal feed, and we are there's a social justice issue here. We're asking people of the Amazon to take down their own forests so that they can grow crops to feed animals, which are then eaten in the global north. Or Brazil. I mean, Brazil's a massive meat producing country as well. But it's not a system that we can take forward into this future on a planet which is going to be reeling from unstable weather conditions where to grow anything might become a challenge in some areas. I just think it's a ridiculous use of natural resources. It's a ridiculous disrespect for the land of our land, but also the land of other peoples. It's a terrible disrespecting, I hate to use that word as a verb, but of other species. And what it has led to, the way that we've chosen to use our land here today on this planet has led to only 4% of mammals alive today are wild. And that statistic is plummeting because of the effects that they're facing through prolonged drought, forest fires. I think recently 100,000 baby penguins starved to death. I cannot remember where this was, but this came up in the news because the oceans have changed so much that there was not enough fish for their parents to find them to feed the baby. So we've essentially wiped out a colony. So that 4% will drop to 3% to 2%. And yet we've got something like over 60% is farmed animals. So we have
and then the waste.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A third to a quarter of all food produced is thrown away, including some of those animal bodies, including a lot of milk, potatoes, and grain. So again, coming back to this idea of what are the linking themes behind my work: sustainable fashion, animal agriculture. There's systems gone wrong, systems that benefit the few big megacorps. And that's again why I spend so much time trying to alert people to the systems.
It doesn't seem very intelligent, does it?
No.
No. So what do you think of ideas like the George Monbiot, you know, precision fermentation and all of that, or would you
Mm.
just go completely plant-based
Uh,
if you were in charge of the world?
If I was in charge of the world, I think we're in a time where we need a multi-pronged solution. So I would not say that you then replace all meat with just precision fermentation. I think you work dynamic. I don't know enough about precision fermentation. I do know a bit about Monbiot stats, like if we went, okay, enough with the factory farms, let's close them down. If we then tried to raise all of those animals that we've kept within factory farms in these wonderful open regenerative grazing systems, we'd have to have another couple of planets. So
Yeah.
I do know that. I'm open to new technologies, of which I would include precision fermentation as a part of the solution, but not the solution.
No.
And
And also that I think the big danger, and that goes back to the kind of systemic things you were referring to, is
ownership.
it will get captured by powerful again.
Yeah, yeah,
So we'll have a few companies just controlling all of that.
yeah. It's so true, Kim. Actually, you're so right. And that is probably the problem with all technologies being offered up as the climate answers, is that all of them have the potential to be captured by big business. And actually, then the only counter to that is to empower the communities. Community energy systems, community food systems, community democratic systems, and this is the time, if anything really characterizes this time, is the call to the communities to organize and take action, to mitigate and to adapt, to provide resilience, to create future worlds.
Yeah, hence our work in Heart and a lot of your work. I wonder if that's a good time to move on to the Climate Emergency Centre, because I know you set up the one in Islington.
Yeah. So the Climate Centre, we called it the Climate Centre actually, because we thought the climate emergency would actually make it sound a bit too freaky, frightening, I would say. We called it the Climate Centre, and that was a response to a post-pandemic world where all the lessons we seem to have learned during the pandemic, value the frontline worker, value nature, all of those lessons. Oh my God, I remember so many climate activists just going, now people will see, they'll listen to the bird song and they'll see. And it didn't happen that way. And I remember thinking, okay, so protest isn't going to upscale solutions as fast as we need. A pandemic is not going to wake people up as fast as we need. Perversely, or I suppose conversely, we need to go back to the ground now, and we need to work with communities and meet people where they are, and then try and keep them going. And so I set up the centre in 2022. It closed temporarily in January 2023, and with this aim in mind, let's meet people where they are, applaud their incredible efforts, and then show them other ways. Let's talk to them about systems, through a nice toy swap or a clothing swap. Let's see if we can then introduce the idea that there are other bigger beasts to tackle. And some people were ready for that conversation, other people were desperate for that conversation, and other people just went, I just want to know how to recycle properly. And so it's been an adventure of joy and surprises and not quite what we thought it was going to be. But it's something I would encourage everyone to do if you can in some way. Set up some kind of community site, even if it's just an evening a month in a local community centre where you discuss solutions, you give them some great vegan food, have it, through the Climate Centre, I've now started to see that resistance to the dominant systems can take all forms.
Yeah. But it's interesting, even your sort of comment about we didn't call it the emergency centre, which I respect, but it's, do you think people are still not telling the truth? I mean, in terms of if you took the general public in the UK, I think they still don't know what's happening.
They don't, Kim. I mean, they don't, because I don't think life would be continuing quite like this. You know, I look out my window and everyone's ambling around, and you know, you would never really know looking out on the street or even at our media, to be honest, would you? You know, or our magazines or our expressions of culture, that there was an emergency. And you know, I'm not the only one, I think, who sort of thought, well, you know, if you looked at the war, everyone was galvanized and working towards a single, or more or less a single. It doesn't feel like that at the moment.
No.
Someone said to me yesterday, we need to be in an emergency to act. But we kind of are.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating. Now, I will offer you this. In being part of the Climate Centre, we have been thrilled to see how many small groups there are, pockets here and there. I mean, just dozens and dozens and dozens, Kim, working towards some kind of resilience, working to protect communities, working with the elderly and the disenfranchised, working for justice, working, you know, from local food delivery schemes to what's the great one? There was a little truck that cycles around zero waste, so you can go pop out and get your lentils, and struggling a bit, but they're there. And I think it was someone who described it as a mycelium network of groups.
I love that.
Yeah, just waiting to rise up. We'll need them so much. I mean, they will be called dynamically, I think, in times moving forward. But so there is hope. There is so much more work than we see.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I'm just letting somebody else in who's
Sure.
A little bit late.
And we're recording this anyway.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, well, I think thank you so much, Bel. I think let's throw it open. And as we are a fairly small group, I think if you have a question for Bel, just unmute yourself and go for it. What are you curious about? Otherwise, I've still got lots of questions.
But yeah, Bill, on the subject of fashion, what's your thoughts around charity shop culture, clothes banks, etc., etc.?
I'll speak to the charity shop issue, because I'm not. Charity shops, yeah, they're well, there's quite a lot to say. That's why I'm pausing, actually. Sorry, Ross.
Sorry.
It's okay. So first of all, we have an issue here, for example, in Islington, which is, you know, both quite moneyed and quite impoverished, where the charity shops now look really, really good.
Yeah.
And the clothes selections are really quite good, but some of them are expensive.
Yeah.
You know, because So I walked in and I thought, this jumper, oh, it's a second-hand jumper. I'm not buying anything new. I'm doing so well, and it was £40.
Well, that's what I'm sorry to interrupt. It's what I've been finding, because I mean, I've been to Islington, so I know there's a lot of charity shops there. I've been to quite a few towns and cities, and I notice charity shops, and I go in and I look. It seems to be the culture now that if it's got a label on it, the price goes up, and that starting to annoy me, because the simple reason they get it for nothing. Yeah. And I feel now that yes, that the charity shops are becoming more like boutiques, and so obviously they you know, they're good causes, you know, hospices and whatever else they do. But I'm thinking that it's just getting that much more expensive to go into a charity shop. Yeah.
So it depends on the area, though, Ross, as well, because I went down to a charity shop in Hove, and it was back to the prices I recognised, like £1.50 for a t-shirt.
Right.
So there's a geographical element there, but I would say also sometimes you know, we're finding out more about, you know, staggering salaries that charity CEOs can be paid. And if you think, well, my clothes are being sold to raise money to pay his salary, can be quite, for some charities, not all charities, but for some charities, that can be quite frustrating. I think someone else actually came up to me and said, there's a campaign that needs to be run, Bel, and it's that charities, we donate loads and then they can only take a tiny proportion, because a lot of what they take is for some reason deemed unusable. So they often don't have the facilities to deal with small stains, for example. And the woman I was talking to who flagged that up for me, she has a bank of repairers, and she said they would give anything to access these items which just have a stain, which could be patched over, or have a little daffodil, embroidered over, or anything.
Yeah.
And she said, but the charities are not allowed to give out those items with. So there's still a lot of clothing from those charities going out to incinerators and to the shores of Ghana, and so the whole charity shop system, I think, does really need to be examined. And again, it goes back to the most sustainable clothing that you have is the one in your wardrobe.
Right.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who else has a question?
If not, I can come up with my top 3 tips for what to do now. I had to
I'd
ask.
certainly be interested in that.
Okay, well, I will give those if no one has a question, because it is often asked of me. The first one is to follow the climate scientists to get a true grip on what's happening. And now I would say follow them, read what they say, and give yourself loads of space to process that. So they're very, very upset, and you have to be strong to confront injustice. And I did get burnt out, actually, and it's exhausting. But it doesn't take much to you can build yourself up, but the news is very, very bad, so be prepared. But if you want to counter the white noise of mainstream media and advertising and publications like the Daily Mail, it really is worth getting to grips with the science. Not so you blow your mind, but not so you blow your mind on data, but so you know what they're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
The second is find like-minded communities, like Heart, but also places where you feel safe to follow your own, where you want to go, where you're called, if you like. You might be called to battle loneliness in itself. Bizarrely, it's a fight for justice, which is a fight for the climate and the future that we want to see. In community as well, I would spend time modeling new visions of the future and making them concrete. This is, there was some guy who said, I just want a park on my street. So he took over a little car parking space for a couple of days, turned it into a garden, beautiful plants, a table, tea, drinks, and people just sat in this future world. I think future visioning is the counter to all the bad news, because I was having a conversation yesterday, the good world is there. The good world where we're in alignment with nature, in harmony with community, taking care of the animals that we profess to love, using things sparingly with respect, and enjoying what we have rather than always seeking the next purchase. Make those world concrete. One of the greatest moments in the Climate Centre is when I sat there. I don't know if I told you this, Claire. I sat there, Kim. I sat there and I realised that there was visible darning going over there, and there was poster making of anarchic posters over here, and someone was having a chat about, I can't remember, heat pumps over here. And just for an hour, that was the world that I wanted my daughter to grow up in, where we were working together in different ways, sewing, chatting, eating vegan foods. It was, visioning is really important, keep you going, and it builds the structures you'll need as things get rocky. And the third one, really, and I know this sounds political, and I am sorry, but I do think if you can, go vegan. It addresses so many of the issues that we've talked about, from justice to land use to water to social equity to decolonization to, I took part in something called a biodiversity collage, which looked at cause and effect of biodiversity loss. So you have a stable biodiversity, and then all of these intrusive things happen, and then you basically have a compromised biodiverse system. And the plant-based diet answered so many of those cards, it was starting to get ridiculous. I thought, if I was a vegan advocate, just lay down these cards and go, oh, look, that that sorted by reducing our consumption of meat and dairy. Dairy is not innocent, it's part of the same system. So, and then I would add a fourth, which is get political in any way you can. Go to your MP or your local councillors and begin dialogues with them and building relationships with them. It cannot be on the consumer to do the right thing. Even though I've been talking about community, we have to change the overriding system as well, or at least challenge it, you know, and make sure it's, otherwise our task is very, very uphill. And establishing dialogue with the political systems around us is really fundamental. And those would be my 4 tips.
Very nice, good, excellent. Lots of wisdom there. On the vegan thing, so where would you, somebody who's considering going vegan, where would you tell them to start? I mean, obviously there's loads of books and things and websites. Do you have a favourite?
I don't, but what I would say is don't do it straight off, because your body's conditioned to eat lots of meat. So I started off, what should I do? I went, cut out meat, but left cheese in, then cut out dairy, because I found out about, I mean, dairy I abhor because of the separation of the mother and baby. It's the only way a cow produces milk, is if she gives birth and the baby is immediately taken. So I was a mother, my daughter was 6 at the time, and I couldn't believe we were doing this to other animals on this scale, you know, because, so then I cut out dairy, but I left fish in because I was like, I don't like fish, so, you know, fish, you know. And then you start to look at the processes of industrial fishing and what it's doing to the ocean. I just went, fish is out. But the philosophical journey it took me on also allowed my body to adapt, which was really great.
Right.
Don't make the mistake of going, that vegan burger tastes awful, therefore all vegan burgers taste awful.
Okay.
It's not true. There's some great vegan burgers, and there's some vegan burgers that taste like concrete in glue. And so pick the good one. Learn to love vegetables. Like, sometimes I didn't like vegetables as a kid. Sometimes you chomp down, you can really taste the earth in it, and you can taste the soils and the processes that have made this incredible thing, you know. So experiment a lot, get ready to learn to chop vegetables. So there's not a single source, it's really just gathering. And actually the longer I've been vegan for 6 years, and it becomes, what it feels like is that a veil has been lifted.
Yeah, okay.
And I've started to see, why are we eating other creatures? It just seems a bit crazy now. Whereas even before I would kind of go, you know, it was a transition time, but I feel very happy doing it. Like, just keep experimenting. Don't beat yourself up if you know, make a mistake. Not make a mistake, but if you fall back. The thing that really keeps me locked on, though, is knowing that what the animals are going through, and that's hard. That's hard knowledge to own. Really is. I think even if you don't like animals, you do have to think, why are we doing this to creatures simply because they can't speak out for themselves? So I think there is that issue, and that holds me steady.
Yeah, great, thank you. And I know you spend a lot of time talking with young people, teenagers and so on, which is how we met, working at that school. Yeah, how does particularly the sustainable fashion piece, well, and the animal agriculture, how does that go down with them? What are you finding about this generation of young people?
Yeah, do you know what? It was really what I've been delighted by is what appeals to them is justice. They are often, I've been in lots of groups where they're outraged by how other peoples are being exploited for their behalf, for their goods, for their products. And I just remember one group where I showed them a picture of a page I had put together for Metro newspaper, and the theme of the page was tribal. Let's all dress tribal. You know, this is back in the day when I didn't understand what I was talking about. And I remember saying to this group of teenagers, what tribe? Which tribe? I've just reduced, hundreds of indigenous groups into one visual style, and when you kind of, again, this lifting of the veil,
Yes.
they were all going, yeah, bloody hell, what is it? There's a print here and an Aztec looking thing there, and it's actually quite disrespectful. And I think also when you also talk to them about the way they're being manipulated. So I do a lot of deconstructing of fashion advertisements with students, and I ask them to look at how an ad is constructed to create desire. And when you sort of demystify that process and you say there are billions being spent trying to make you buy that handbag just there, for why? There is a response there. They don't want to be duped, and they don't want to contribute to the suffering of others. It's actually really powerful, because we tend to think of young people as like, oh, I just want to shop and I just want to, but actually when you present them with the facts, they go, that's really wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. Although I recently had a conversation like this with a 16-year-old climate activist, and she was saying it was quite frustrating for her because she found that people's kind of engagement with these issues was in itself a fashion.
Yeah.
She said that back in 2018 to 2019, school strikes for future, all of that kind of stuff, everybody got really, people in her peer group got really engaged, and now it's kind of, oh, that's a bit passé, and again this it's so she spends her whole life kind of trying to educate people in her peer group, but it's really interesting, again, the manipulation, the social media, and again, because people aren't being told the truth.
It's so true. It is so true.
Yeah.
I suppose because the dominant media that they consume is to do with consumption, is to do often with shopping, and so it's almost natural for any person to go, well, if that's what most people are talking about, maybe that's more important than what a few people are talking about, which is the climate emergency.
Yeah. So we just had a message from, is it Vinta? I'm in education and totally agree that students are very supportive and are generally outraged at being dictated to by fast fashion. Excellent.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Yeah, very good. Any final questions for Bel? Or just kind of comments or observations? How have you found the last almost hour? Sorry, you need to unmute yourself, Binta.
Oh, hi, Binta.
Hi, you hear me now? Oh,
Yeah.
hi there. I'm interested in vintage fashion and promote vintage fashion, and I just kind of wanted to kind of pick your brains about how to kind of discuss this with other people, because people seem to think that I'm against buying anything new, anything whatever, which I'm not. I just want people to really think mindfully about what they're buying, and like you say, to actually maintain the clothes that they've got and to have an attachment with the clothes that they've got. So it's kind of having that conversation and not being open to being brainwashed by trends and what they should be wearing. So it's really hard, because obviously it's trends and things are everywhere, and it kind of frustrates me. I'm not telling anybody that what they should and what they shouldn't buy. It's how can I get that message across without being preachy, because I don't want to tell anybody what they should and what they shouldn't do, but I just feel like I need to make people aware, and it's kind of a different an equilibrium. I don't want to put people off, but I want people to know, kind of thing, how do I support that vision in a way.
Yeah, so I think you need to continue having the conversations with people, so don't feel you can't, but what you would, because it's right what you're doing, it's the correct way forward. We've got to reuse what's already out there. What I would do is carry with you in your head perhaps 3 facts. So the 3 facts perhaps that you have found most stunning about the production of new fashion, and then just trot them out, almost just like say them, and then almost step away. And sometimes you'll find that someone's actually going. Some of the most powerful activism has to happen on an individual scale. So you'll talk to one person, you'll go, "Did you know 2,700 litres of water to make one t-shirt?" Really shocking, isn't it? What should we get for lunch? You know, just almost keeping it light, dropping in. You never know what you seed. And then you might find someone else, you go, 2,700 litres of water for one t-shirt, and they go, "What?" And you go, "Yeah. Oh my God, that really threw me," you know. And then you can say, "I don't want to tell people what to wear, but I don't know if I ever want to buy another new t-shirt again, or at least I'm going to think very carefully about it." So this is something we do in the Climate Centre. It's just, you almost keep it light, and you drop in something, and then you judge there was one bit of activism I did, which I'll never forget. It was called Train Talks for Extinction Rebellion. I'm on the periphery of Extinction Rebellion. I have not been arrested. But we did this thing called Train Talks, and we would get up and we would talk to this train carriage, and we go, "We're in a climate emergency, da 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 da," and I could just see everyone shut down. So what we then started doing was going along the carriage, going, "Did you know we're in a climate emergency? We're not asking you to join Extinction Rebellion because we don't need you to join Extinction Rebellion. We just want you to be aware of this." And the conversation with every person was different. One woman, a little old lady, shrank in terror from me as if I was going to make her go out and protest. But other people going, "I don't know what to do. You know, where can I find out more info? Here's your lead." Do you see what I mean? So do it on a case-by-case basis, but don't stop doing it. But those 3 facts that you keep in your head, really, really key. The other thing is, again, building the new world by organizing perhaps an upcycling workshop. There are loads of groups that have speakers in, and choose someone who's light and bubbly, who can talk about things, and then maybe follow with an upcycling and darning workshop about mending clothing, customizing styling. So there you have, I love bringing in the hand, even though I'm not very brilliant at my hands myself. But they say that climate activism is about head, which is like the stats, heart, because you know something could be better done, hand, making, digging, da 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 da, and soul, which is the whole package, I think, really. So yeah, keep on doing it. You know you're right. And I think one of the qualities that this time is calling to us to exhibit is courage. And sometimes that means just stepping out of the usual and going, "Did you know?" But there's so many ways to do it in a non-threatening, non-preachy way. And that's fundamental too. We have to accept people. They're trying. They're just, I mean, I had a conversation where I got into a sort of narky sort of with a friend of mine going, "You know, animals are really suffering and they're really da 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 da," and he was going da da da. And then a year later he was like, "I'm vegan." Do you know what I mean? So you just don't know how things are going to happen, but you've got to keep trying.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. I think that's a really good place to pause. Bel, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your heart. And yeah, very, very grateful to you. This will be on our YouTube channel when it's uploaded. And thank you, everybody, for coming as well.
So thank you.
Yeah, everybody unmute yourself and just say au revoir or goodbye.
Au revoir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being
Take
here.
care. Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kim. Bye.